Okay, over the last 2 days we've been building 2 graphics examples. I'm just going to run this real quick so you can see. We have our dancing banana guy, which was just an example of how you could build a J-frame and how you could put things in it. So the 2 things we put into our first example was just 2 labels, a very simple graphical user interface object. Although the label can be used for pictures and text, and we did that. And then we talked about things like layout, how you lay out the position of stuff. So I showed you how you can resize things, and using this thing called flow layout, it'll automatically position stuff. In the second one we worked on yesterday, we added a couple other things. Yes, we have a label, but we have 2 text boxes and a button. As well, we made it such that we didn't let it flow the things into their own position. The way we did it yesterday, right at the end of the period, was we used this method setBounds to actually lock it into a specific spot on the J-frame. And we did that by setting the layout to null. So no layout style whatsoever. So all this looks great at this point. We can do this beautiful layout, but the button doesn't do anything. And that's a problem. We want to be able to have our button do something. So we're going to insert code in between those last lines of setBounds and the whole set size thing. So in here, we're going to get the button working. But buttons are tricky, okay? In the sense that what's happening here, and I'm not going to draw the whole design, is we have this button sitting there on our design with a little plus sign on it. And what it has to do is it has to sit there and wait for the user to interact with it. The second the user takes their little mousy mouse and clicks on that button, that's when we want something to happen. What we're going to do here in order to make this happen is we have to what's called listen, is the term they use in programming, for an event to happen. We are listening for an event. The event specifically is the click event. We are waiting for it to click. We are listening for that click event to occur. And once it does occur, we will react to the event. Okay? So they make use of terms like event listeners or action listeners. These are things that listen for actions and then react to them. So in order to do this, we have to use a class that does this. So what I want you to make is something called an capital A, action, capital L, listener. And again, you can use control spacebar if you want, having trouble spelling it. But the A and the L are capitalized. So we're going to be building something called an action listener. And let's just call this something like button listener. It doesn't matter what we called it. We could have called it X. Equals a new action listener. Now, I'd like everyone to just pause from typing for a sec, because I want you to see what happens when I do this. Okay? Because it's going to happen to you, and it's going to freak you out a little bit. When you use control spacebar to have it finish action listener for you, whoops, action listener, and you hit enter, a whole bunch of code is going to get thrown up on the screen there. Blah, thrown up on the screen. So you notice right here, from the point I hit enter, all this code was just dumped on my screen right there. That's actually a good thing, because you do have to type that code. So I'm going to go back and show you again how I did that. Okay? So I'm saying action listener, button listener equals new action listener. If you just type it all yourself, you're going to have to type a lot, which is why I suggest you use control spacebar to say action listener and let it fill in all that code for you, and then put your semicolon. Okay? And actually yours might say throws new exception or something like that in there as well. It might say it right there. Right here it might say something. Okay, does that look about right? Did anyone not get to that point? Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with keying that all in yourself, but I kind of wanted to pause for a second and identify what's actually going on here. Okay? So we're making this thing, it's called an action listener. It's called button listener. And here we say equals new action listener. Normally, at this point, the semicolon goes right there. That's normally what happens. But for some reason, the semicolon's way down here. So what's all the stuff in between? What's all this that got put in between there and there? Well, what it looks like is it looks like a method, and that's exactly what it is. It is a method that was put in there. A method called action performed. And it says it's an override method, which means it's overriding a method that already exists in the action listener class. What we're doing here is we are building an action listener, but it is insisting that we override one of its methods. It is not letting us not get away with this. So it's saying you can't just make a button listener. If you want me to make you an action listener, I need you to do this. You have to do this. Okay? This is being forced upon you because this is what's called an abstract class. This is actually beyond anything we need to know, but I will be demonstrating this in, say, a demo of next week. If we'll do like a gaming example, I'll show you how you can kind of build that in and make that a more useful sort of programming practice. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that that code is taken care of for you, and it's actually right here, oops, that the actual code for the button goes, if you want it to go there. So don't do this, but I'm just going to throw in JOption pane for now. Don't do this. Show message, dialog, null, hi. So let's just say I had that line in there. In theory now, when I run this program, where's my dancing banana? Where's peanut butter jelly time? Come on, you can do this. Oh, there it is. There it was. Smartboard stuff. Okay, so there's peanut butter jelly time. Where's my other guy? Oh, there it is. So now when I hit the plus button, nothing happens. What's going on? Let's just try this again. Seemed a bit strange. Oh, I know why. I know why. We're not quite done yet. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that line there for now. We're not going to do anything with it, but we have to do one more thing. We built a button listener. We built this button listener, but what's it listening to? We haven't told it what to listen to. It's sitting there waiting to perform an action, but we haven't attached it to the thing we need to listen to. So now we need to do this. Button add dot add action listener, and then we put the button listener as a parameter. What this line does is it attaches the button listener to the button, and when the button listener is attached to the button, it will perform this action when it needs to, whatever that action is. Now again, don't put that JOption code in there because we're going to change it in a second. But I'm just showing you what happens here. So now, when I run this, and I click the button, it performs the action. Okay, but it's actually kind of, if you look at this code, it is kind of confusing. So I never ever recommend putting any actual logic in there. Instead, what I usually recommend is rather than put all the code that you need to do adding two numbers together here, let's send this to a method that we write. Let's create a method called add numbers. Like that. Or capital N. So when I perform the actions, it will look for a method called add numbers. Now, what you don't want to do here when you're using these action listeners is use the light bulb. Because I just want to show you what happens. If you create the method add numbers, it makes it in here, which is not where we want it. Instead, what we want to do is put our own method down in our own class. So, and we can make it private. We don't have to make it public. Private void add numbers. down here. And then you'll notice it'll make the error go away up top there. Okay, so this is called an action listener. It is tricky to use, no doubt. So we're going to do another example of it in example 3 just to reinforce it. But for those of you who are feeling like this is never anything I'm going to be able to remember all this, also, just to ease your mind, there is a slightly easier way to do this. When you get to what I showed you last time, the GUI editor that comes with NetBeans, so I'm just going to launch that real quick. So this kind of thing, very C-sharp-like, because you remember in C-sharp it wasn't this hard to do a button. In C-sharp you just take a button, stick it on a form like this, and then you double-click the button. And that's where you'd put your code. Well, sure enough, NetBeans can do something very similar to that right here. So you can put your code right there. However, just so you know, what NetBeans is actually doing, let me just set the layout here for 1 sec. And we'll do a little bit of this when we get to graphics part 4. What's actually happening is NetBeans is doing what we just did. It is creating an action listener, and it is sending it from one method to another method. It's doing the same code that we're doing. Okay, let's get this program done. Let's add the numbers together. Let's make a string called text1 equal to, we have to get it out of our text box, txt number1 dot get text. Right? In C# it would be just dot text, but in Java it's get text. And then we'll do that for text2 with txt2. We'll create an integer called number1 equal to integer dot percent of text1. Remember when I first taught that to you, how difficult that seemed? That seems so easy now by comparison. Text2, 2. So there, I've stored the two numbers from the two text boxes. Let me get an answer by adding them together. Number 1 plus number 2. Some simple math there. So I've now calculated my answer. Now I'm going to put that answer into my label called LBL answer. Dot set text, not get text, and I'll give it the equal sign plus the answer. And that should be it. Time for the big run, time for the big test on this program. The world's greatest adding machine. 2 plus 3 equals 5. Yay! It works. 25 plus 36 equals 61. Yay! It works. Incredibly simple program, but a lot of Java learning went on there to make that happen. Okay? I know I went kind of quick there through some of that. I'm gonna go over some of that action listener stuff again when we look at our graphics example 3. But in graphics example 3, I got to warn you guys, we're going to really kick up the notches here. Because this is not an exciting program. You guys could have easily done this at the end of grade 10 in C# in like 2 minutes. So like I said before, we're going to make Photoshop tomorrow. So we got to really ramp up the difficulty factor here if we're going to make a bigger, better program. So we're definitely going to do that tomorrow, make something way more cool than what we've been working on so far. So there it is. That's the simple graphics example 2. I will upload that code into the notes folder later today.